how are you doing today? Thank you for coming into your therapy session with me today. I think it's very important to come to therapy sessions, and I'm excited to hear what we unpack today.
I've just been angry, frustrated, exhausted. I was reading the poems from Jose Oliveras. They read me like a book. There's this one line, check my balance to check my conscience. I feel like that's me every day.
Your feelings are very real and valid. I read some of his work before too, and his poetry really spoke to me as well. It's a powerful moment to reflect, to feel, to see yourself in someone's work. You're connecting deeply with your own experiences and the experiences of others that you see happening in his work. You're connecting deeply with the pain, the in-betweenness, the rage. His work, I love his work as well. I've definitely read a lot of it because I kind of see myself in it as well. So I understand your feelings of anger, rage. But let's think about this differently. Can I ask you, do you think this anger is just personal? Or is it much deeper than that?
No, I don't think it's personal. It just feels personal because I lived it. But then I start thinking, it's not just me. You know, my students, my family, friends. It's a whole system.
Right. That anger, right? When we really think about it, like, these are systems of inequity, and it is personal, but it's also personal to your community, and that's where your feelings are stemming from not seeing just yourself going through this, but your community, the people around you. Like, it's awful of how unfair the world is, right? It's not fair, and it's definitely, the systems are against underrepresented communities. When we think about like race, language, class, and experiences that people have depending on their own identities, it's sad how these systems were created, and they weren't created for us or for people in the community. And we really think about Oliveira's poetry is not personal. It's not just personal. It is personal when you're reading it, but it's not just personal, it's political. And that's why it's so powerful. It reveals a world where equity isn't the default. Like, that's not the world we live in. Like, everyone's always like equity, but that's not the world we live in. We live in a world of inequality, and we really need to reflect on that. So I understand the feelings you're feeling from reading these pieces.
That word equity, that buzzword, I thought it was just something schools would slap onto a mission statement. But I think I get it now. Equity means recognizing that people start in different places. I want to do something about it. Like most systems, especially education, they don't.
Yeah, you're hitting on key ideas about like equity versus equality. Have you ever seen the image of the 3 children on the baseball field where they're all different heights and they can't see over the fence, and they're all just given the same equal amount of crates? That's kind of equality, right? They're not given what they're needed, because when they step on the stool, some can still see and some don't need it. Well, equity, each person is given an amount of different crates depending on their height and what their needs are. So I really like to think about equity versus equality, right? Where equality assumes we need the same thing. Equality assumes we are receiving fairness. Well, really, equity is more powerful because it acknowledges that we all don't need the same thing, that we make sure we do the research and the assessment of like what each community needs in order to succeed, that being in like, you know, the health gaps, the wealth gaps, the educational gaps that exist in the society. It kind of talks on about how like Bobby Harder reminds us the cycle of socialization, and how powerful it is, and how it conditions us to believe that we are stuck in the same place. Like, for example, like if you're born into a lower class, you're socialized to stay in that place through different ways, especially through education, even when it's a myth, like when we think about like in conditions to us to believe in meritocracy, like that's not real, right?
I always thought if I worked hard, I'll succeed. But that's just not the case. Reading LaRoe's research, hard work is not enough. When kids start off from vastly different places, different support and access, I'm working class. The way I was taught was to obey. Middle class kids, they're trained for success.
And those differences aren't accidental, it's systemic, right? Like, we are conditioned to believe that, to act a certain way. They're designed, it's a structural thing. It's really a bummer, and thank you for sharing your experience. I think about Anon's work on hidden curriculum, right? That's what you just shared, is hidden curriculum. Like, you aren't taught certain things because of what class you were born into. And really, it reflects how the school systems are broken, and they need to be evolved. We need to have a vision to like fix this issue, to help students to break those barriers, right? Because right now schools are reproducing social class, right? We're setting up some students for failure. They are not just teaching math or reading, they're teaching kids on how to navigate the world, how to ask for help, how not to ask for help, teaching them behaviors of like what kind of citizen, what kind of human, what kind of person they're expected to become in the society. And that's why education is so important, and we really need to reflect more on how to break and change systems.
I thought it wasn't good enough for so long. I thought I had to change the way I spoke, the things that I valued, just to fit in academically or even professionally. It was never about my merit. That was Bourdieu's culture capital in action. I never lacked intelligence. What I did lack was just the right kind of capital.
Breakthrough.
Exactly. And you recognize that. It's like part of the unlearning. Like, we got so much unlearning to do. And that's why we're here, right? And that's like kind of the cycle of liberation, and more on a positive note, like think about liberation, right? You're naming the system, you're understanding the system, and then you start to break them down. You're rebelling against the system. You're not just reacting anymore. You're reflecting and beginning to rebuild. Like, once you identify certain concepts, like, it changes your process of thinking and kind of making sure you unlearn the habits that you learn throughout life, and kind of shifting into a more positive mindset as well.
It's not easy. I still catch myself trying to prove that I belong. But now I'm going to ask myself, who taught me this? Whose standards am I performing for? I want to do that type of liberation work. That's what I want to pass down to my students.
And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be really hard. It really is. But don't let that discourage you. You're very passionate about your students and supporting your students, and change can really happen. You really got to reflect on kind of where you want to support students and how this is going to shift your practice as an educator.
It makes me want to ask harder questions. Whose voice is centered in the curriculum? Who gets labeled at risk? Who's in the honors track? I'm not just looking for the inequity in just outcomes, But who's setting those expectations? I want to do something about it.
Good that you're asking these questions. You should be asking more. And constantly, even when you think the work is done, you keep on asking more questions to make sure you evolve. And that's a profound shift from educator as gatekeeper to educator as liberator.
If you could give me more tools, like, I want to learn more and explore about race, class, language, all the intersectionalities of education policy. I want to understand how equity shows up in data, in discipline policies, and importantly, funding. I think that's why I came to Hugsy. I want to learn how to make the invisible visible.
I love that. Hugsy is a very powerful place. I've only heard amazing things about that. And what does that mean for your future, going to Hugsy and now into the educational world?
That I'm not just content with teaching content. I want to, teach resistance, identity, reflection. It means all the kids like Oliveras, or just a kid like myself, that we're seen as a whole person and not split into two.
That's equity in action. And it starts with listening to your anger, reflecting, self-reflecting, seeing your community, learning, unlearning, doing the work. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very hard, but it is worthwhile. And asking what it was pointing to.
Yeah, that anger, I don't think it's just fire. It's fuel.
Wow.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you for sharing. What you just shared was very powerful. And I'm excited to kind of see you on our next session and the work that you're doing and how it's going to be reflecting every time I see you, what other questions you may have, and the power of keeping equity in mind in education.